You're listening to School Leadership Reimagined, episode number 37.
Welcome to the School Leadership Reimagined podcast, where we rethink what's possible to transform your school. If you're tired of settling for small wins and incremental improvement, then stay tuned to discover powerful and practical strategies for getting every teacher in your school moving towards excellence. Now, here's your host, Robin Jackson.
Hey Builders, welcome to another episode of School Leadership Reimagined. I'm your host, Robin Jackson, and today we're in the fourth episode of a 4-episode arc about the 4 disciplines of buildership: feedback, support, accountability, and culture. We've been talking about the 4 disciplines because, really, if you are going to reach your vision, achieve your mission, and live out your core values in your school, they are the only 4 things you can do to move teacher practice, change teacher attitudes, and stay focused on your goals. And once you understand that there are only really 4 ways that you can impact teacher practice, and you choose to focus only on these 4 disciplines every single day, then the 101 things that you're currently worried about doing every day will just evaporate. You see, I think that many of us are under the mistaken notion that in order to reach our vision for our school, we have to run around doing 101 things, trying to repair everything that's broken first. And we put undue pressure on ourselves to, quote unquote, fix our schools. So we grab every new program, or we latch on to every new, quote unquote, best practice. And we run ourselves ragged, trying to patch all the holes in our instructional program, or convert all of our teachers, or clean up every single mess and fix everything that's wrong with our culture first before we feel like we can actually move forward towards our vision, mission, and core values. We're so busy tweaking and fixing that we don't have time to do the work that we really want to be doing. You know, I love old houses. In fact, I live in a house that's almost 100 years old. It's great. It has high ceilings. It's got gorgeous moldings. It's got a lot of character. It also has 100,000 little problems. And every time I fix one wall, another wall cracks. Or every time I repair, some aspect of the faulty wiring, a sink starts to leak. Or every time I patch a hole in the roof, I get a leak in the foundation. Now, I love this house, so I do it. But I realized that when I bought it, I would either spend the rest of my life in this house patching and making repairs, or I could go out and build something better. And at the time when I bought the house, I didn't really have the money or to gut it and to start all over. So I thought, how bad could it be? I'll just patch the holes. I'll make a few repairs. It'll be great. And then as I live in the house for a while, then maybe I can start making repairs later on, or maybe I could gut it later on when I have more money. But after being in the house for a while, I now see the folly of my ways. I've invested a lot of money patching and fixing and repairing the house. But in many cases, I've only made superficial improvements. The house looks good, but there's always another crack, always another leak, always another problem. Why? Well, because beneath those gorgeously painted walls is still really old wiring. And what I should have done is, in order to really fix this house, I'd have to tear out everything and start all over, down from scratch, rebuilding this house from scratch. So I live with it for now. But one day, whether I want to or not, I'm going to have to stop fixing and stop repairing and actually gut this house and build something better. Well, it's the same thing with your schools, right? We spend a lot of time, unfortunately, fixing and repairing and patching our schools. We know we have a culture problem, but instead of rebuilding our culture, we put Band-Aids on it, like having an end of the year party or putting joy notes in staff boxes, and try to make up for the fact that our teachers are overwhelmed, they're overworked, they're not getting along with each other. So instead of rebuilding our culture, we just put a Band-Aid on it. Or we know that instruction isn't really where it should be, and that some teachers are really not teaching the way that they should be teaching. But instead of dealing with the teachers directly and helping make serious changes to their practice, we go in, we model lessons, we give them books to read, we offer them advice that results in tweaks here or there, but no real change to their practice. We know that discipline is an issue with our students and that our students need more support. But instead of restructuring our school to give them the support that they need, we buy a new curriculum or a new program, or we hope that some other thing will fix the problem. And we keep thinking that if we patch this problem or tweak that problem or repair this issue, somehow it's going to result in a better school. Well, it doesn't. The only way to fix what's broken in your school is to actually build a better school. And when I say build a better school, it's really quite simple. The first thing you need to do is you have to set a bigger vision, a bigger mission, a bigger set of core values. And I say this all the time. People think, they dismiss it. Oh, we did a mission. And then I ask them, okay, what's your mission statement? And they can't tell me. So you may have gone through a vision exercise or a mission exercise before, but if it's alive in a folder or a binder somewhere in the shelf and it's not alive in the halls of your school, if it's not driving the work of your school, then you need to set a bigger vision. You need to revisit your mission. You need to set some clear core values for your school. So the first thing is you've got to do that. The second step is you need to, you go out after you set this vision, this mission, these core values, and you maintain them and use them to achieve your goals. And the way you maintain them is by practicing the 4 disciplines of buildership. So once you have your core values, your vision, and your mission set, the way that you actually make them alive in your school is you are constantly giving people feedback around how they are moving towards those core values, vision, and mission. You're constantly supporting them so they're empowered to make to move closer to those core values, vision, and mission. You're constantly tweaking your culture so that it aligns with your core values, vision, and mission. And you're constantly helping people be accountable to the core values, vision, and mission. So 1, set your vision, mission, and core values. 2, maintain them consistently by practicing the 4 disciplines of buildership. And then 3, you'll have a bigger impact than you ever thought possible. That's it. That's why over the last several episodes, I've been spending a lot of time talking about the 4 disciplines of buildership, because when you practice these, you stay laser focused on your vision, mission, and core values, and you keep everybody in your school laser focused on your vision, mission, and core values. Now, so far, we've talked about 3 of the 4 disciplines. We talked about how culture helps keep everybody engaged in the work, and that moves you closer to your vision, mission, and core values. We talked about how feedback helps everybody own your vision, mission, and core values for themselves and use your vision, mission, and core values to guide their own growth. And then we talked about how support empowers everybody to carry out your vision, mission, and core values in their day-to-day work. And today, we're going to talk about how accountability keeps everybody aligned to your vision, mission, and core values. Accountability is about alignment. Now, I feel a little sorry for the word accountability because it's usually used to mean that we're going to beat somebody up for something that they didn't do. And so accountability gets a bad rap. In fact, most accountability efforts are really drenched in shame and blame and judgment. Somebody fails to hit a benchmark, so we shame them with data or force them to adopt a new protocol or flock into their classrooms to give them quote unquote constructive feedback. And then we hope that the numbers will change by the next benchmark or else. Or somebody fails to come in on time or turn the grades in on time, or they miss a duty and we slam the desk and we say they need to be held accountable. So we write them up and we threaten them with disciplinary action. We often see accountability as something that we do to other people rather than thinking about, something different. We hold people accountable. We implement accountability measures. But let me ask you something. When you hold somebody accountable, who's doing the work? Who's ultimately responsible? Remember way back in episode 30 when I talked about how to hold a boundary like a builder? Well, if you're doing most of the work, if you're being punished as a result of holding somebody else accountable, then who's really being accountable? Wouldn't it be better if everyone in your building took ownership over their own growth and felt a real sense of responsibility for their own behavior? Wouldn't it be better if everybody in your building cared about the work just as much, if not more, than you did? Wouldn't it be better if instead of spending all of your time chasing and checking and correcting others, you could trust everyone to do the right thing, even when you weren't checking? Right now, we're running ourselves ragged, trying to hold everybody accountable. Stop. You don't have to do that. You don't have to make others do the right thing, and you don't always have to be the bad guy. There is a better way. You can build a school where everyone shares in the responsibility for moving your school towards the vision, mission, and core values, and you can build a school where everybody is committed to doing the right thing. Here's something else. You can build a school where everybody is aligned and focused and doing the right work the right way. And you can do all of this if you practice the discipline of accountability like a builder. But before we dive in to talk about how you do that, first, I want to tell you one of my favorite parts of Builders Lab. So the first few days of Builders Lab, you're going to set your vision, your mission, and your core values, and then you're going to learn how to practice the 4 disciplines of Buildership. So we're going to go in deep about how to give people feedback that's really powerful, how to use surefire support to support your teachers, how to build a better culture, and how to help people be accountable. And we're going to use those 4 disciplines in the service of helping you achieve your vision, mission, and core values. So that's cool. I love that part of Builders Lab. But on day 3 is my favorite part, because on day 3, you're actually going to create your own builder's blueprint. And that's going to chart your unique pathway to achieving your goals. And the reason I love day 3 is because a lot of times we go to conferences, we learn a lot, we hear some cool things, then we get back to our schools and we say, okay, yeah, what was that thing I learned at the conference? Oh yeah, I'm going to do that. But as soon as you walk in, you're slammed because everybody's been waiting for you to get back. Even though we're doing these over the summer, I know you have a ton of stuff to do over the summer already. And so a lot of times when you go home from a conference, you go home with the best of intentions, and yet you still don't get anything done. But at Builders Lab, we have thought about that. We've heard that complaint, and we don't want that to happen to you. So we have built-in accountability at Builders Lab. And that happens on day 3, because once you create your builder's blueprint, the rest of day 3 is really about implementation. We have an implementation lab, and we've been playing around with implementation labs for the last couple of years, really trying to figure out how to make them the most effective. And I think we've finally figured it out, because during the implementation lab, you will have your builder's blueprint. You're going to pull out a calendar. You're going to start putting dates on the calendar. You're going to start creating a change agenda so that when you go back to your school, you will have already gotten started. It won't be just some great idea or a fun time I had at a conference. You will have gotten something done before you get back to your school. And summer is the perfect time to go to Builders Lab, because that's a time when you're making your plans anyway. That's a time when you're gearing up your school year. So we are going to have 2 Builders Labs this summer. The first one is Builders Lab 1, and that's happening June 24 through 26 in Palm Springs, California. The second one is also Builders Lab 1. So the one in California, we're calling Builders Lab 1 West, and the one in Arlington, Virginia, right outside of Washington, D.C., is Builders Lab 1 East. They have the exact same content. The only difference is that Builders Lab East will have a special session just for instructional coaches. So if you are a school administrator or a district administrator, either conference will work for you. If you're an instructional coach, you can come to either conference, but Builders Lab East will have a special session just for instructional coaches. You can learn about both of those Builders Labs and get your tickets to both of those Builders Labs by going to mindstepsinc.com/builders-lab. That's mindstepsinc.com/builders-lab. And I have to tell you that tickets, we've had an upswing of tickets now that everybody's off of spring break. Everybody's getting their POs in. So it's filling up pretty quickly. So you don't want to wait for Builders Lab. And if you're working on getting a PO, why don't you give us a call or shoot us an email at the office and let us know that you're coming so that we can make sure we hold your ticket for you. And you can reach us at the office at 1-888-565-8881, or I'll put a booking link so that you can set up an appointment and schedule a call to speak with somebody in the office. I'll put that in the show notes. Okay. Now that we've talked about how you can be more accountable to yourself this summer by coming to Builders Lab, let's talk about the way that leaders typically hold teachers accountable. So what leaders typically do is they either try to reward good behavior or they punish bad behavior. Basically, it's carrots and sticks. Now, I've already talked about the flaws of this approach in episode 30, where I talked about how to hold a boundary. And so I'll link to episode 30 in the show notes. But I'm not going to go into it again here. If you want to hear about why that doesn't work, make sure you listen to episode 30. Instead, I want to talk about another aspect of accountability that leaders often neglect, and it's really the secret weapon for builders. In fact, it's the main reason that builders are able to grow an accountable organization. Are you ready to hear the secret? Okay, here it is. Builders go first. Builders don't expect others to be more accountable than they are being themselves. Builders go first. So if you want teachers to use data to make better instructional decisions, then how consistently are you using data to inform the work that you're doing as a school? Or if you want teachers to support struggling students, how much support are you giving the struggling teachers? If you want teachers to come in on time, how often are you starting your meetings on time or getting feedback to teachers on time? How often are you dismissing teachers on time from staff meetings? You want teachers to actively participate in PD and apply what they're learning to their own practice. But when was the last time that you were actively engaged in your own PD and use it to improve your own performance? You see, you've got to be who you want to see. And if you aren't being accountable yourself, you can't hold anybody else accountable. It's just that simple. And hey, I'm really guilty of this myself. I used to get mad when a team member showed up late for a meeting until I realized that I started meetings late all the time, maybe 1 or 2 minutes, but it was still late. It was okay for me to be late, but when somebody else is late, well, I thought it was like an unpardonable sin. Be who you want to see, Robin. That's what I have to keep saying to myself. I used to get mad when my team didn't deliver a work product on time. I'd fuss and rail about how important it was to keep with deadlines but when I really thought about it, I missed deadlines all the time, except when I missed them, I always had a great excuse. I had a horrible flight delay and I didn't get home till 2 a.m. and I was exhausted from my last trip, or the creative juices just weren't flowing this morning, or I was working on my book all night. And so, whatever. These are all great excuses. They all sounded legitimate because they were my excuses. But I wasn't accepting any excuses from my team. They also had equally quote unquote legitimate excuses. Again, be who you want to see, Robin. I used to get mad that we weren't getting enough done as a company until I realized that every time I read a new book or listened to a new podcast or went to a conference, I would hear a great idea and then I'd come back to the office and change our entire business plan. So we were stuck because we just kept changing courses. Again, be who you want to see. You see, whenever I go work in a school or a district and the administrator tells me that their teachers need to be more accountable, I almost always find that it's not the teachers who need to be more accountable, it's the administrator. I'll give you an example. I was doing a workshop with principals and assistant principals this spring, and I was taking them through the Builder's Blueprint. So if you don't know what that is, basically it's a process that we use to help people figure out what their core values, vision, and mission are. And then we help them figure out what's the biggest constraint getting in the way of their core values or achieving their core values, vision, and mission. And then we show them a pathway to success. So it's really about creating your own success path. And then from there, you build that into a change agenda or a 90-day plan to move your school forward. So that's what we were doing. So we were working on this Builder's Blueprint, and it's a really cool thing. And we're working on his success path. So basically, the success path is that you answered this question. We want students to do X, so teachers need to do Y. So we as the builders in the building need to do Z. So you trace things back to figure out what does everybody need to be doing right now to move us closer to our goal. And so we were working on his success path, and he did a pretty good job of using data to identify what the students needed to do, what has to change for students in order for them to reach their goal. And then, the next part came when we figured out what teachers needed to do. And he basically said, the teachers need to just do their jobs. And I was like, well, okay, which part of their jobs exactly? And that's where he got stuck. So we worked through that for a while, and he determined that teachers needed to do more to foster student ownership, especially over their behavior. They were having some behavior problems. Teachers weren't really holding kids accountable. Okay, so far, so good. But then we got to, okay, so what do you need to do as the administrator in the building to help teachers, help kids take more ownership? And that's where he got stuck. Immediately, he looked at it for a while. It's either one of four things. Do they need more feedback? Do they need more support? Do they need more accountability? Or is it a culture issue? And after he looked at it for a minute, he said, oh, definitely accountability. So I asked him why. And he said, the teachers aren't doing it, so I need to hold them accountable for doing it. And so then I challenged him a little bit. And I said, well, have you trained the teachers on how to foster more ownership? And that's when he got kind of indignant. He started complaining about the teachers. Well, it turns out he was really wrestling with a different problem. You see, he was losing a lot of his new teachers because they complained that some of the established teachers weren't pulling their own weight. So these established teachers weren't doing things like showing up for their assigned lunch duty or share their lesson plans during collaborative planning time or even show up for collaborative planning time. And they didn't turn in their grades on time and on and on and on. And when he finished venting, I asked him, okay, so what happens when a teacher doesn't show up for lunch duty? And then he got this pinched look on his face. And at first he didn't say anything. And then he said, well, the admin team is doing other things at lunch. So a lot of times we don't know that they haven't shown up for lunch duty unless somebody tells us. Okay, so remember, be who you want to see. So I asked him, if you're not showing up for lunch duty, why do you expect the teachers to? Well, that went over really well, as you can imagine. He got mad at me, and then he said he didn't have time to spend all of his time checking up on other teachers for something that they know they should be doing it. And, yeah, I get it. Except the expectation in the building was that the administrators would be at lunch with the teachers. So from the teacher's perspective, the administration was shirking their duty. And so if they didn't show up, why should the teachers? Again, be who you want to see. Just about every accountability problem you have in your school starts with you. I always say this, the fish rots from the head. And people hate me when I say it. I hate hearing it, especially when it comes to my own organization, but it's true. Most accountability problems start at the top. So before you go fuss at a teacher, you need to ask yourself, have I been accountable? And that doesn't mean that you shouldn't help a teacher be more accountable. What it does mean is that accountability starts with you. You see, I get people asking me all the time, what do you do about a teacher who doesn't do this? Or what do I do about a teacher who won't do that? And I think that's the wrong question. Instead, the first question I ask is, what is it about our current environment that makes that behavior acceptable? I mean, it's a totally different question. So if I have teachers who are constantly coming to meetings late, I wonder, what can I change in the way that we conduct meetings that would help everybody get there on time and want to be there on time? Or if I have teachers who aren't, posting grades on time, or they're not communicating regularly with parents, then the first question I'm always asking is, what is it about our current environment that makes that behavior okay? Are you not constantly hitting your improvement goals each year? Again, ask yourself the question, what is it about the environment that makes it okay to consistently underperform? And here's what I usually discover. It's usually something I'm not doing. Now, don't you give me the stink eye. I'm just the messenger. You see, you gotta be who you want to see. If you don't start here, if you don't embrace the idea of being who you want to see first, then you're going to continually waste all of your time and all of your energy chasing and checking and correcting people instead of galvanizing people to build a better school. If you don't start with you, if you don't assess you first, then you will get mad at everybody else and never deal with what is probably the root cause of the problem. Now, if you've seen the boss leader builder chart that we have out, you can find it on our website. I'll link to it in the show notes. But if you've ever seen that chart, one of the big differences between a boss, a leader, and a builder is this. I say this all the time. Bosses say go. They ask people to do things that they haven't done themselves. Leaders say, let's go. So that's a little bit better, right? You're walking alongside of people. You're being accountable. They're being accountable. But here's the difference between leaders and builders. Leaders stay with everybody else or stay, a couple of steps ahead. Builders go first. Builders don't say go. They don't say let's go. They say come. They are inviting people to do something they've already done. And when you do that, when you're inviting people to someplace you've already been or to do something you've already done, things change. You're not saying, let's all try to be more accountable together. You're saying, I've been accountable. And here are the results. Here's what I was able to build by being accountable. So come, join me. Join me in building this bigger thing. Join me in aligning your work with my work. So together we can build something that neither of us could imagine that was possible before we got started. That's the difference. So how do you do that? How do you realistically be who you want to see, go first, and help everybody be accountable rather than spending all of your time and energy holding people accountable? Well, the answer is really simple. You build accountability into the very structure of your school. It becomes a total part of your school structure. Because here's the thing about accountability. The reason that we often fail at it is because once you start trying to hold people accountable, you can't let up. So you can't get distracted because the moment you let up, then people go back to doing what they already do. It's exhausting. But when you build it into your structure, you don't have to monitor it. You don't have to, get up every day and check it. It's made obvious. When I was a teacher, I really struggled with the idea that during the midpoint in the marking period, I would sit down and kind of add up grades so that I could turn in or send out progress reports. And I was always shocked at the number of students who were falling behind, and I hadn't realized it. They were slipping through the cracks. I thought they were doing fine. But when I started calculating the grades and looking at the cumulative, calculation for the grades, I started seeing, oh no, these kids are doing worse than I thought. And I would feel horrible because a lot of times, by the time the progress report came home, we'd gone so far in the marking period that there really wasn't a lot the kids could do to catch up, especially if kids had really kind of fallen off a cliff pretty quickly. And so I had to figure out a way. I am not good about checking that kind of thing every single day. So how do I find a way to build it into my process so I don't have to think about it? I don't have to remind myself to go check. It's just right there in front of me, and it's someplace that I cannot ignore. And so what I did was we were just starting an electronic grade book. And so what I did is I programmed my grade book to turn every child who was earning below an 80% cumulatively in my class at any given moment, it would turn their name red on my attendance sheet. So every day when I logged in to take attendance, I could see which kids' grades had slipped below that 80% mark, which for me was really important because 80% for me was the baseline mastery. I wanted every kid to get to at least 80%. The moment I started doing that, I didn't have to remind myself every day. It was just obvious. It was right there in front of me. It changed the way that I dealt with kids because every single day when I took attendance, I had a daily reminder that not all of my kids were achieving. And I created a whole support system that I just embedded in the culture of my classroom. So I didn't have to think about it. The moment a kid triggered one of my red flags, they got automatic support. So therefore, I didn't have to remind myself, I need to follow up with this kid. Oh, this kid is really struggling. I need to do something about it. It's hard to keep up with 150, 200 kids doing that. Once I embedded the support into the way that I taught my class, everybody got support automatically. And when I did that, I did not have any student earning anything below a C in my class. You heard me. Once I changed that and made support automatic, kids stopped failing my class because they were getting the support they need. And their support wasn't dependent on whether I remembered it or not. The support was built into the structure of my classroom. Now, if you want to learn more about that system, I wrote about it in the book, How to Support Struggling Students. And I'll make sure that I link to that in the show notes. But don't miss the point. The point is this. In order to help everybody, including you, stay accountable, the things that are really important to you, you need to embed in your school culture. So let's say that, you have a vision, mission, and core values. And in years past, you've sat down in the summertime, you created a school improvement plan. You've made these really kind of bold plans. And then you start the year, kind of focus on these plans, and then as the year progresses, you do less and less and less towards your plan. It kind of sits up on the shelf, and then at the end of the year, you're like, oh man, I really wish we said we were going to do this year, and we didn't do it. If that's your reality, then the way that you change that reality is you embed the accountability into your culture. And one of the most powerful ways that I know to embed accountability into the culture, to just make it a part of our culture, is the meeting rhythm. Now, I've talked about this before. I've talked about the accountable meeting agenda, and I think that's in episode 19. So we'll make sure that we link to episode 19 in the show notes as well. But here's the way the meeting rhythm works. If you want to stay focused on any goal, you need a meeting rhythm and you need an accountable meeting agenda. It's the only way I know. So even here at MindSteps, we have had goals in the past. We've never, we've not hit our goals, or we meet and we say, yeah, we're not hitting our goals. We're looking at the data. We're just not doing anything about them. And I don't know if you've ever done that, if you've ever looked at the data and said, yeah, our kids are not doing anything and we need to move forward, or, these efforts aren't working, and you just don't know how to fix it. And so you kind of look at the data every month, and the data is always bad and nothing improves. And every meeting is about talking about another problem. And you just get stuck in that circle of problem discussions. If that's your reality, the meeting rhythm will build instant accountability. So the way the meeting rhythm works is that you have to set aside time regularly to revisit your goals, remove the obstacles to your goals, and consistently make progress towards your goals. So you need a yearly meeting, and the yearly meeting is where you kind of set your goals for the year. You need a quarterly meeting, which is where you're checking in every single quarter on your progress, and also identifying, okay, what actions are we going to take in the next 90 days that's going to help us reach our goals? And how are we going to remove obstacles to reaching our goals for the year in the next 90 days? What can we do in the next 90 days that will have a significant impact on our ability to reach our goals? So once you've established that at the quarterly meeting, you need to meet monthly to check in to figure out, okay, what's working, what's not working, what do we need to stop doing, what do we need to start doing, what do we need to do less, what do we need to do more? And that's what happens at your monthly meeting. Then you need weekly meetings, because every single week you want to be making progress towards your goals. So the weekly meetings are designed to help you say, okay, where are we? Are we on track? Are we off track? And if we're off track, what's the problem? And how do we start solving these problems so that we can make sure we're on track towards our goals? So every week, you're going to come up with a to-do list of things that are solving problems, removing obstacles to achieving goals. And then on your daily meetings, you're checking in and saying, okay, we said we were going to do X by the end of the week. How are you coming? What did you do today? What did you say you were going to do today? What did you do today? What were your obstacles that kept you from having a perfect day? And what are you going to do tomorrow? When you establish that kind of meeting rhythm where you are meeting with your leadership team on a regular basis, you will get so much more done. I am telling you, it's really a life-changing kind of thing, right? So I have a coaching group of principals that I'm working with right now, and they report to me that they're not even doing it perfectly, but they have started using the meeting rhythm and using these accountable agendas. And people are like, I don't want to go in a meeting and be the one that didn't get my work done. So now everybody is accountable and everybody's moving that work. You don't have to chase check. It's built into the structure of your school. And guess what else? They are getting more done in a shorter period of time. That's what happens when you build accountability into the calendar, into the meeting rhythm, into the structure of how you do business. That's just one example, but you shouldn't underestimate the power of a meeting rhythm. I know it's not like sexy and but the meeting rhythm can be powerful. Even here at MindSteps, I was really frustrated because I have all these big goals and dreams for what we wanted to accomplish, and we weren't getting stuff done. All we were doing is every meeting looking at the same data that tells us we were not getting stuff done. We switched to these agendas and this meeting rhythm, and I'm telling you, we get so much stuff. We get more done in 90 days than most people get done in a year. So just embedding that accountability into the culture, making it something that I don't have to think about. I don't have to, force myself to go out and be accountable. It's just part of the culture. If you want teachers calling parents more, then you need to build that into your schedule. I've seen school schedules where parent calls are a part of what they do every Thursday at team meetings. They are in their team meeting. If their team meets every single day on Thursdays, they are calling parents. If you want teachers to support struggling students and do reteaching and retesting, stop asking them to do it on their own time. Build time to do it in the culture. One of the schools where I worked, we changed our master schedule and built in reteaching and reassessment as a part of the culture. Guess what? The moment we did that, we didn't have to go and fuss at teachers for not reteaching and reassessing. There was a time in the day where everybody was doing it. We made it so obvious and so a part of the structure that it was harder not to do it than it was to do it. If you want teachers to use benchmark testing, then how can you build that into your culture? If you want teachers to co-plan, but you've got one teacher on one end of the building and another teacher on the other end of the building, how are they expected to co-plan? Put them together so that they are in the same hallway. Make sure that they have the same planning periods so that they can co-plan. Anything that you want done, if you build it into the structure of your culture, then you don't have to hold people accountable because you've helped them be accountable. Now, here's the thing. We all struggle with accountability. I know we often wish that we were more responsible or that we made deadlines. I do all the time. I miss deadlines. I run late. I don't do something that I said I was going to do. And then what happens is that I always beat myself up and wonder, why can't I just be more responsible? Well, maybe you've done that too. Maybe you beat yourself up for missing deadlines or not meeting your goals every single year, or you beat yourself up because your school isn't moving forward in the way that you want it to move. You're frustrated because you know that there are things that need to be done and you just can't seem to get them done. Well, instead of beating yourself up or beating up the other people around you, there is another way. First of all, you have to be who you want to see. If you want people to start acting in a more accountable way, you have to go first. You have to be accountable. And then once you've done that, then you start looking for ways to structure accountability into the very fabric of your school so that people don't have to make any extra effort to be accountable to your goals. It's built into the structure. They don't have to do anything extra. It's built into the very culture of your school. You do those two things, and you will have a more accountable organization because that's how you build accountability into your school like a builder. Now, before we go, don't forget to get your ticket to Builders Lab. If you want to find out how to get everybody on board, aligned with your vision, mission, and core values, and moving forward so that you can have a successful school year this year, if you want to turn your school into a success story so that everybody is on board, even the naysayers and the people who are dragging their feet and the people you haven't been able to move in the past, if you want to learn how to do that, you need to come to Builders Lab because at Builders Lab, that's exactly what we're going to be tackling. So to get your ticket for Builders Lab, just go to mindstepsinc.com/builders-lab. And once you've done that, let me know on LinkedIn. Hit me up on LinkedIn. Send me a message and let me know you're coming so we can start connecting now so that by the time we see each other this summer, we will already be old friends. So I also need a favor from you. Would you mind leaving a review for this podcast? If you don't know how to do it, just go to schoolleadershipreimagined.com/episode 37 and there are instructions on how to do it. But if you could leave a review of this podcast on iTunes, it does two things. Number one, it helps give me feedback on how the podcast is doing so that I can make sure that I'm serving you. And number two, it helps other people find this podcast. So you could be a hero to me and you could be a hero to somebody else who's looking for this kind of support by just leaving a review. If you're not inclined to leave a review, here's something else you could do. Would you mind sharing this podcast with at least 2 other people this week? 2 other people who may be struggling with accountability or maybe struggling with feedback or support or culture. If you could just share this podcast with them, then you could help them out. And also we can get the word out because the bigger this army of builders grows, the more that we can start to transform children's lives. So please share the podcast with 2 people this week. All right, now let's talk about next week. A while back, I mentioned that if enough people let me know that they wanted a podcast on how to do focus groups, I would do a podcast on focus group. I've been hearing a lot from people about focus groups. So next time, we are going to look at how you can collect feedback like a builder. I'll talk to you next time.
Thank you for listening to the School Leadership Reimagined podcast. For show notes and free downloads, visit schoolleadershipreimagined.com. School Leadership Reimagined is brought to you by MindSteps, Inc., where we build master teachers.